just say briefly about the extra credit, is that the extra credit problem is a quadratic equation problem. And we're not there yet as far as going through the Algebra 2 book. For a quadratic equation, let me just show you what is going on. All right, this is the width and this is length, right? All right, the quadratic equation that you're supposed to be able to do is x is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of what? B squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Okay? All right, okay, now this, they're taking an x out in width. What does that leave? That leaves here, it leaves 20 minus x, and here it leaves 30 minus x. The area is multiplied. 20 minus x times 30 minus x, which is quadratic equation, and the area of the whole minus this, which I think was 184, becomes 416. Right? Then you combine it together and use the quadratic formula, and you'll get two numbers. You get two numbers, and when you plug them in, only one of them works. All right, but then you have another problem to do after that. But at any rate, this is a classic problem that you ought to be able to do as the best algebra students, right? For an average algebra student, this may or may not be something that you can do because of its complexity. Okay? Now, I would love to see you be able to do this and understand it because it is a test type of problem. Right? And if you understand what it is, now we'll get to it. You don't copy this down because we'll get to it. All right? But for right now, what I was trying to do is to show you guys what is being tested, because the last two quizzes, both of them had a similar type of problem, that we're working with linear in the text, in the book, and this extra credit is on quadratics, which to me doesn't make any sense. Okay, but at any rate, it is what it is. Okay? All right, now, so let me get back to the real stuff. Yes, ma'am?
Did you come up with that?
No, I did not. These are from years past. This is the quiz that I was told to give at the end to see whether or not the Chapter 2 people. Now, I like the first 5. The first 5 are fair, because that's what we've been covering. Right? The extra credit, to me, is too far off base. If I had been with you in Algebra 1, then I would have probably told you how to do that problem back when we did quadratic equations. Because that was the step above, that once we understood it, then, okay, because you have a basic of quadratic formula, here's a problem where you have to use the quadratic formula. We've already studied that enough to where you would be remembering it, but I don't know what you did last year. Okay? All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at the quiz practice for Chapter 3. All right, where we are, and I didn't make this big, although I probably can. View, zoom, 200. That should do it. There, why didn't it work? Didn't that go? All right, let me try it one more time. Zoom. Oh, I got to put it there. Ever need the 200? That's fine. That. All right, let's do it this way. Okay. All right, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be finishing section 3-4, which is equations, linear equations, all right? And you're going to do problems 16 through 28. Right? It's just a continuation of what you've already done, right? This is already in your book. Then you're going to do section 5, which is models, right? And notice that you're only doing 1, 2, 3, and 15. Right, so, but there are several questions for each, right? And then chapter 6, which is the review that we're going to start right now. Okay, so what you've been working on goes back to what we did last week. And, all right, let's look at this problem right here. All right, last week we talked about given this point and this slope, you can create a point-slope equation, right, which puts this 2 as the y, and then, well, I think back, no, that's not what this one is, but we can do the point-slope equation, and with the slope of 1/2, we have 2 equals 1/2 times -5, that's this, plus the b, and then we can find the b, right? Or you can do it with a multiplication. You can do it with a multiplication, which we're going to get into. But what we're going to find is that the standard form equation has a positive x plus 5y equals -1. Right? And most of what you're going to do in the rest of this chapter is involved with creating a linear equation. And in Algebra 2 and higher, all equations, linear equations in final form, are supposed to be standard form. X and y on the same side, number on the other side. X is supposed to be positive. Okay? So if you had this equation, because this x is negative, we're going to have to add an x. That's what puts it over here. Right? So these equations are different. All right? And I know why that's that way. It's because these are the ones that go together. Okay? So you see again, standard form equations. All right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the chapter test, and let's talk about some of this. Okay, review 1. Now, what's the word evaluate mean? What's that word?
Value.
Value. Find the value. What is the value? It's a number, right? So when you see evaluate, it says give me a number. All right? Now, evaluate for y if x is 1, 2, or 5, all right? Now, what happens at -1? What happens if x is -1 in that equation? What do you have here? 3 times -1 is how much? -3 subtract 7. You better get -10. All right? 0's here, -3 here. Subtract 7, you get deeper. -10. Okay? Now, what happens when x is 2? What's 3 times 2? Subtract 7. No, -1, right? Right? Again, 6 minus 6 is 0. 6 minus 7 goes below 0. So it's -1. And then finally, when x is 5, 15 subtract 7. You're going to hate that answer. You're going to hate that answer. What's 15 subtract 7? 8, right? Okay. Okay? So, give me those all day long, yes?
Yes.
Okay, not hard, not hard. All right, and one thing that I do not see going on, which is okay, in high school, you are allowed to use calculator. And shame on you for getting the wrong arithmetic. Right? The calculator will not help you put the numbers in. Right? But the calculator will do the arithmetic. Right? And there is no good reason to make a silly mistake when one of the tools you are allowed to use is a calculator. Okay? You don't have to. Once you get out of 8th grade, you don't have to do all the math in your head anymore. Okay? So please use your calculator. All right? That's the first thing. Okay? Now, next thing we're going to talk about is how to plot. Okay? Now, when we're talking about plotting or graphing, now we're talking about using it on the coordinate plane. Okay? But I want to see what you think about graphing. Okay? First of all, how do you plot this equation? It says y equals 2/5 x minus 3. All right, how do you plot that?
Well, 1 point go at -30.
There, yes, y. Okay, that's the first thing. Is that you're going to start with a dot on -3. Any particular place that dot's located?
It's on the x-axis.
It's on the y-axis, right? Because in this form, that's the y-intercept. So the y-intercept has an x of 0 and a y of -3, and that's the point you plot. So that's where it starts. And then we have a slope of 2/5. Okay? Yep. All right, now let's see if I can manage this correctly. All right. So here is -3, 0. And then it was up 2 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It was down 2 and back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we would have the arrows on the end. And hopefully you would do that with a straight edge. Okay? All right, so, and from slope-intercept, we have y equals 2/5 x minus 3. But that's not the Algebra 2 way to express that equation. What is the standard form and how do we get it? All right, those of you that had tutoring this past week, remember what we did with the 2/5? How do you clear the 5? Multiply both sides by 5, and this will disappear by canceling, and I'll have a 5 over here. So that's 5y. What happens on this side? I multiply, distribute the 2. So 5y equals 2x minus 6. All right? Is the x positive? Everybody say yes.
Yes.
Yes, the x is positive, so the x stays here, and the y has to come over and meet it. So I have 2x minus 5y. And the 6 is on the wrong side. When I move it to the other, what does it become? It becomes positive 6, because I have to add a positive 6 to be able to get a 0 here, and I'll end up with positive 6. So the equation of that line in standard form is 2x minus 5y equals 6. Now, if you're given standard form, the y-intercept, wait a second, what did I do wrong here? Did I change the problem? That math doesn't work. Oh, okay. The slope is 2/5. That's weird. Sorry for that. That one didn't come out the way I wanted it to come out. Okay, let's try this again. All right. What happens here? We multiply by 5. Right? And then this 2 just stays here. This becomes a 15. I was doing the point slope in my mind. That's what I did wrong. So when I multiply by 5, this becomes 5y equals 2x minus 15. Right? And now when I change it, I have 2x minus 5y. I've got to add 15, and I get 15. And now my slope will work, because what is 15 divided by -5? -3. Okay? That's why I knew I'd made a mistake, because when I went and divided this constant by the number in front of the y to get the intercept, I had the wrong number. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, now let's look at another one. We can do that. Let's look at this one. Okay? Now, what's the difference between this equation and the first one we did? This is called standard form, right? This is called slope-intercept form. Okay? Now, in standard form, how do you determine where the y-intercept is? This is a trick you should know. Okay? When you move the x term, you're going to divide by this coefficient. So what's going to happen to the 21? It's also divided by... So what is 21 divided by 3? 7, right? So therefore my y-intercept is 7, just like this y-intercept was negative 3. Okay? So now I know where I'm going to plot. Right? I'm going to start with positive 7. Now what's the slope of this equation? Right? Again, the 7x has to go the other side, so the number is going to become negative 7 divided by 3. Where this slope was 2 over 5, this slope will be negative 7 divided by 3. Okay? And the plotting of that will be the same. Right? So we're not going to bother plotting it because we're trying to analyze what the difference is between how this was presented and how that was presented. Okay? If you can plot this one, now you should be able to plot this one. But you have to do the math. Somebody did the math for you here. Okay? All right, now, these two are very important. Most test questions for algebra include talking about vertical and horizontal lines. Now, here's what I want you to see. Those are all y equals. What do you notice about this? There's no y, is there?
Yeah.
Right now, I know what happened to the y here. Right? This says y equals 0x plus 4. The slope is 0. And so the x disappeared. All right? I don't have y equals anything here, so I don't have a linear equation. All right? Now, the question is, what's it look like? Good question? All right? Now, the answer is simple. The answer is simple. Okay? Where is x equal to 3? X is equal to 3 all along this line. Okay? Now, to do slope, you have to trace the slope with your hand from left to right. Watch what happens if I try to trace this going left to right. I can't stay on the line, which means there's no slope to this line. Now, let's do the same thing if I have this. This happens to be y equals 8. Can I trace that line? As I do that, am I going up or down? Neither. But so I have a slope of 0. I'm going neither up nor down. But I can't trace this line, so this line has no slope. It is x equals 3. This line is y equals 8. This has a slope of 0. This has no slope. Once you get that down, these are easy. Right, question, Ann?
No.
Make sense? All right, okay. All right. Again, what's the slope of this?
0.
The slope is 0, so y equals mx plus b. Right? This point is 0, 8. When I put a 0 here and an 8 here, the b equals 8, and so I end up with y equals 8. That's the equation of this horizontal line. I don't have a slope here. All right, now, if I were calculating the slope, let's take this point and this point. This point right here is 3, 3, and this point here is 3, 1. All right, how far apart are the y's? 2. How far apart are the x's? 0. What is 2 divided by 0? It's undefined. Therefore, there is no slope. All right, that's the reason for that. All right, but if you just recognize that you can't trace it because you can't trace it left to right, so I can't go from one point to another point. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, I hope so. All right, now let me clear the board with my handy dandy eraser stuff here.
We want more.
Yeah, this other one's almost empty. And somebody even washed our thing here too. All right. There, is that clear? All right. Next. Okay, so let's look at these again. All right, so let's go back here. How do I plot a slope-intercept? How do I plot it? You have to answer this. I go to -3, put a dot, and then up 2, over 5, then down 2, back 5. Okay, how do I do if I've given this one? You have to find the y-intercept. Where's the y-intercept? 21 divided by 3. And most of the time, those are going to be in the same times table, so you get a whole number. Okay? If it were a point slope, it wouldn't matter. We covered point slope last week. Okay, now what's the slope of this? 7 goes to the other side as -7 divided by 3. So, if you're asked for the slope and intercept and given this, you don't have to change it, just do the math. Okay? Now, what happened? I hit the wrong button. Okay. Now, this is point slope. What's the point that's on the graph? It has an x of 4, opposite. It has an x of 4 and a y of -3, opposite. X of 4, y of -3. All right, this is supposed to be a minus sign. So this is y minus -3. Okay? Now, what's the slope? -5 over 6. Okay? So, how do we graph it? All right, we start at the point 4, -3, and put a dot, and then we go down 5, over 6, 4, up 5, back 6. Okay? So we can plot that, we can graph that pretty simple. All right, now, but how do you transform it into standard form? Okay, it's not hard. To get it into standard form, first I got to get rid of the fraction. So, multiply both sides by 6. That'll make this 6y plus 18 equals. Now, this side, when I multiply by 6, the 6 cancel. Now, distribute the -5. -5x plus 20. Because -4 times -5 is positive 20.
That was a great catch.
Thank you. All right, now, again, to do standard form, what is the main thing I told you to look for? What has to be positive?
The X.
The x. Is it?
No.
Therefore, move it. Add I got to get rid of this, so I'm going to subtract 18 equals dose.
Equals dose.
All right? So, there's my standard form equation. All right, now let's look. Tell me what the y-intercept is. The y-intercept is 2 divided by 6. That's 1/3.
Oh, you're right. I was thinking backwards.
Yeah, don't be silly, right? Don't be silly, right? It's 2 divided by 6, which is 1/3. So that's why this was in point slope, because the y-intercept would have been a fraction.
Gotcha.
Okay, so the point slope became just a simpler way to do it, right? If I would have had the point slope, I would have had y equals -5, 6 plus 1/3. That would have been the equation. All right, now, all right, what happens if I clear the fractions? What's 6 times this?
6y.
6y. Boom. What's 6? There's an x here, sorry. What's, if I remove it, by canceling, I have -5y, which is this. All right, now, what's 6 times this? 2. Okay. Now, but this one is ugly, and so we don't like it. Right? And it's ugly, right? Most of the time in Algebra 2 and higher, this is what you end up using. Because you can already do the easy ones.
Right.
Okay? Yeah, it'd be nice, wouldn't it? Okay? All right, now. Okay, so what have we done? We've taken a point slope problem, and we've talked about graphing it. It graphs almost as easily as the y-intercept problem does. Right? And then we transformed this back into standard form because all Algebra 2 and linear equations are supposed to be in standard form. Okay? Now, so now we can look at the next one. If I can get it to move. There it goes. Okay, now, up until this point, I've given you the information. Right? Maybe not all of it, but most of it, right? So now, you have to come up with the information. All I'm doing is giving you these 2 points. All right, how do we find slope? Slope is the change in y over the change in x. It's a fraction. So which are the y numbers?
Oh, I remember how to do this.
Okay, then find the slope. Tell me how to find the slope.
So you have, it's -7 minus 3 over 5 minus 2?
If you start with the -7, you have to start with the 2.
Right.
All right, so how far apart is -7 and 3? You got to go 7 and then 3.
10.
So isn't that 10? All right, and if I start at the -7, I'm going up. Right? If I start with the 2 and go to 5, 3. So I'm also going up, and so my slope is 10 over 3.
I remember that part.
Okay? Now, all right. So if I go through those 2 points, I have a slope of 10 over 3. Now what I do is I do the point slope. And let's use the first one. It says y, which is -7, right?
Yes.
Y minus 7 equals 10 over 3, which is the slope. Wait a minute, y plus. It's supposed to be minus, is x minus 2. Okay? Now, clear it. What do you multiply by?
3.
3. So this becomes 3y plus 21 equals, distribute 10x minus
20.
20. Okay?
Yes.
Now, what do I do next?
You gotta raise the x.
Move the x. The x is already positive. Right? So I'm going to anchor this and move the y.
Yeah, and then you add 20 to the other side.
And then I'm going to add 20 here, add 20 here, and I get equals 41.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay?
Yes.
Now, again, that's ugly.
It is.
Because the y-intercept is 41 divided by -3. And that's not, it's not a whole number, but we don't care.
No, we do not.
You know, we don't care. Right? Now, we would have come up with the same equation if we were to use 5 and 3 also. So it doesn't matter which one you use. Okay. All right, yes, use the easiest one. Okay? All right, now, all right, so that answers the first question. All right, you did all the work because the first thing you had to do was find the slope, and after that, what equation did you put it in? The point slope, and then use one of the points. Now, if I were doing this, I would have used the two positives. So that I would have had minus, y minus x minus, right? And you saw the mistake I made, right? I almost forgot that the negative will change that to y plus. So be careful of that. Okay, now, what's a vertical line look like? Vertical line. Okay, how do you make a V? How do you make a V? All right, which way are your hands going? They're going up and down, right? So just straighten it out. All right, how do you make an H? The horizontal goes this way. It's the horizon. The horizon is the place where the sky and the land meet, so it goes like this. All right, but vertical comes down, so that's the only thing it does, right? So that's vertical's up and down. All right, so if it's vertical going to the first point, what about this? If it's vertical, does it have slope? No, so therefore it doesn't say y equals.
Right.
It says what?
X equals.
X equals what in this case?
I don't know.
Well, look at it. First point.
2.
X equals 2. So it says the first point. So which is the x number?
2.
2. So x equals 2 is the value of the equation.
Cool.
All right. Now, horizontal. Horizontal goes this way.
-7.
Right?
Y equals 3.
Y equals, no, so second point.
Y equals 3.
Y equals 3. All right, that's not hard.
And it says 0.
All right, give me those all day long. Once you learn that the horizontal line is y equals, the vertical line is x equals, you can do them all day long.
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right. So, cool. All right. All right. 204. We might make it. Okay. Now, the next part, the next two are the most important. All right, listen. The next two are the most important. I want parallel to this going through this point. Okay, now, the concept of parallel and perpendicular.
Yes.
If you have parallel slope, the slopes are blank. What word goes in there? The slopes are equal, congruent, the same. Take your pick. All right, parallel slopes are equal or the same. Now, therefore, what's the slope of this? Slope of this is 3, right? Y equals mx plus b. The slope of this is 3.
Yeah.
All right, so I know the slope. Had I had a standard form equation, I would have had to calculate the slope a little differently. I have to move the x over and then divide by the y coefficients. But in this case, the slope is 3. So now I have this. I have a point and I have a slope. So how do I find an equation with a point and a slope? Y minus -5 equals slope times x minus the 1. Yes?
Okay, what happens with the -4 then?
I don't care about that. I'm not doing that. I'm doing a parallel line through this point.
Got it.
Right? So I'm not going through the -4 at all. I'm going through a different one.
Okay, cool.
Right? Okay, now. Okay, so now let's get it. First of all, let's get this into a similar form. Okay? If I distribute here, I have 3x minus 3, and then if I subtract 5, I get y equals 3x minus how much? What's -3 minus 5? -8. So this equation is going through -4, this equation is going through -8, and they both have a slope of 3.
Right.
That's why we don't worry about the forehand. That's why you don't worry about it. See, you're finding a new slope. Now, they don't always have to be whole numbers, but they are what they are. Right? The point that's important is the slope at this point. Okay? All right, so that makes sense? Now, that's a test problem. That's a test problem. Okay? Now, all right, let me bring this one up so we can see this. There we go.
Perpendicular. Oh, I missed this.
All right. Perpendicular to y equals 1 negative 1/2. Going through that point. Okay? Now, okay, I hate to tell you this, but I made an error. This is a really hard problem. This is a really hard problem. Because what I forgot to do is I didn't finish this equation. I was supposed to have a 1/2 x. You know, okay. Yeah. All right, by the way, but let's talk about this one. Wait, watch. Where does the slope y equals 1/2 x, where does it go? Doesn't it go this way through? Doesn't it go through 1/2?
Yeah.
All right, isn't that? Oh, negative 1/2 should have been on the bottom, right? Okay, negative, so it should have been down here. Right? Okay, now if it goes through this point, the y value at this point is 1/2. All right, and that becomes a really hard problem. That conception, that's not what I meant to give you. That's not what I meant to give you. Okay, here's what I meant to give you.
There we go.
I can do that one, maybe.
Yes, okay. Now, okay, here's the first thing that you have to recognize. What does a perpendicular slope mean? How do you relate it? Okay, yeah, it looks like this, but mathematically, how is it related? All right, we're not talking about graphing it, mathematically. Mathematically, it is the negative reciprocal. Now, what does negative mean? Change the sign. It's the opposite sign. What's a reciprocal? Fraction that's flipped. Okay, so here's my fraction. Negative 1/2. I want the negative reciprocal of that. So what will the sign be? Positive. What happens when I flip the fraction? 2. So now I have a slope of 2 going through that point. And that we've already done. Right? We would start with y minus 6 equals 2 times x plus 4, because I've got a negative here, so that changes to positive. And then I would do all the manipulations. But the thing that's being tested is how you change from this to this when the question is perpendicular. So let's look at it this way. If I have a slope of 3/5, what's the perpendicular slope? Negative 5/3. Negative 5/3, yes. Okay, as long as you remember that, perpendicular, in my opinion, I want to give perpendicular problems because it's more work for you. Right? If it's parallel, all you have to do is use the same number. Right? So there's less work on parallel. If you can do the perpendicular, the parallel is a slam dunk.
Right.
So this is the more difficult problem. It's not that much harder, but it does require more work and therefore more chance for you to make a mistake. But you don't make mistakes because you're all good math students. Okay? Right? And don't contradict me on that.
Yes, sir.
Okay? All right. Now, too, so this is good. God is good.
Amen.
All right. Okay, this is the most difficult
Oh.
because of the way it's presented. Okay, has a y-intercept of 4 and an x-intercept of 3. Now, don't we have a slope-intercept problem? Slope-intercept form? Slope, which intercept is that when you have slope-intercept? The y-intercept. So it's slope y-intercept. That means I can use this 4. Where does it go in the equation? It goes in the end.
Y minus.
No, y plus 4. So y equals mx plus b. Well, I know that's this. Now, how do I find the slope? Well, this point is an x of 0 and a y of 4. This point is a y of 3, a y of 0 and an x of 3.
Right. I got that.
So, give me the slope. All right? From here to here.
Oh, wait, you subtract.
Yes.
I remember.
So what is 4 subtract 0?
4.
4. What is 0 subtract 3?
Negative 3.
So therefore my slope is
Negative.
negative. But you can't leave it in that form.
Mark.
Because you have to leave it in what form? Standard form. So I can replace this with negative 4/3. All right, now what do I do?
Now
You have to move the y.
You have to.
I got to get rid of the fraction.
Yes, that's what.
How do you do that? Multiply by 3. When I multiply this side by 3, I get 3y. When I multiply this side by 3, you get minus 4x. Multiply that by 3, you get 12. Now, how do I get the standard form?
Well, just move that.
Because this is negative, move it over here, and I get 3y
Plus
4x
12.
equals 12. That's my equation.
That's
That's the hardest problem.
That's the hardest problem.
Hmm?
That's the hardest problem.
That's the problem, yeah. But see, all you were given was this information.
Right.
See, guys.
All right. So if you recognize what we're doing now, see, we have gotten less and less information, and all the manipulations you're doing, you're getting used to doing them. Right? That's the whole idea. Now, the last part in the homework that you've got is a set of word problems that have like 4 or 5 different answers. Right? Go through them slowly. The main point that you've got to be able to do is the manipulations that we've covered today. If you can handle covering those manipulations, there's very few word problems on the test.
Okay, awesome.
Okay?
Cool.
All right, and for that, we are within 2 minutes. Have a good week. And what's going to happen next week is I'm going to give the exam. Let me show you what's happening.
Alright. I was not.
Wait a minute. Okay.
What?
All right. You're going to do the chapter 3 test. About page 108. I'm going to give you the test next week. All right, for this reason. All right, you haven't looked at the material yet. If I were to give you the exam, then you'd have to do the exam after doing the homework with no interaction. Right? And I don't think that's fair. Right? So what we're going to do, because we missed a week, all right, is that you're going to do the test on page 108. That's your responsibility for this week. And then I'm going to give you the test for chapter 3 to do next week. And then you'll start, after you finish the test, and you're going to start chapter 4. Because if you look, what happens next week is your assignment is chapter 4, Systems of Equations. Okay. Now, everything that we're doing in chapter 3, you might need for systems of equations. Okay. And I've got a real cool thing to show you on how to do those fast too. Okay, good day.
Our test on the table.
Wait a minute, okay, hang on. I've got one more thing to show you. But I've got to figure out how to do this here. Is that it?